Okay. I'll just need you to stop it when I'm done. Okay. Get set up here. Should be, because I was a little too far forward. Okay. I'm going to get started here. This morning I'm going to be talking about the gift that keeps on giving. And I don't mean the one from the Christmas movie. I have kind of an interesting spin on something that Jesus said. And we all know that God said, or Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And so this concept of giving is clearly something that is important. Anything that Jesus said is something we should take note of. And so giving should be an integral part of our life, all the different things. And I actually love this idea of being a blessing to others. It's something that I personally strive for, right? The world knows it as philanthropy, where you give things to better your brothers and sisters as humans, right? Some people give to charity. Some people will donate to universities to help students get an education. Some people will donate overseas. Like, there's so many ways that we can give both home and abroad in our lives. And I think that this idea is wonderful, that everybody should aspire to. My personal goal in life is to get to a place where financially I can give away 50% of my income, half. Like, if I could get to a place financially where I manage things just right and I can just donate 50% of my income, that to me is making it, in my opinion. Like, I've made it at that point. And I'm going to get there. At some point in my life, I'm going to be able to easily, month by month, give half of my income away and still be okay and still be able to live. And I think that, whether that is something that you think about or some other version of that, we should all get to that place where we want to give, and we feel as though that's a blessing to others. And sometimes it can be difficult when we give things. Sometimes we don't always see the return right away. I was learning a lot these last few weeks in training, and one of the things that they highlight, because this is leadership training that I've been going through, is an acronym called WIFM. When you're leading people, a lot of times their first reaction is WIFM, which is, what's in it for me? They always think, what's in it for me? And as we give to people, as we bless other people with the fortunate things that we've been given, sometimes it's a natural inclination to have that reaction. Well, wait a minute, what's in it for me? If I give this away, if I live this lifestyle of being a blessing to others, what's in it for me? And there's a lot of things in the Bible that highlight what that is and what that means. And I'm going to talk about kind of a different approach to it. Like I said, kind of a unique approach to what this looks like as giving. But before we get to that, I want to kind of break it down. And so, like I said, I want to get to the place where I can give 50% of my income away and not have to think twice about it. Until I get there, I try to outgive everybody I know. It's not a competition, but that's just where I start. Like, okay, until I can get to the place where I can give 50% of my income away, I just want to know that I've outgiven everybody in my life, because that just makes me feel better inside. I feel more peace about that. And this concept of giving is very important. But there's a facet of giving, a certain part of giving, that I do believe we miss. We miss it. We don't get it. Like, we overlook it. And that's what I want to talk about today. So, to get your guys' brains rolling like I normally like to do, I'm going to give you a practical example. Has anybody ever tried food side by side where one has salt and one does not? Maybe you were cooking something, right, and you tasted it and you're like, this just doesn't taste right. It's missing something, right? And then you add some salt and all of a sudden it's exactly what you imagine. You just tried something side by side, one with salt, one without. And I've always wondered, why this occurs. How is it that one ingredient can do this for all foods? No matter what the food is, as soon as you add salt, it tastes better. Like you would think, okay, different ingredients might enhance this flavor or this flavor, like that makes more sense to me. But having one ingredient, no matter what you put it on, pretty much, unless you put it in water, it's going to make it taste better. And I don't know, maybe you like salty water. Growing up in the ocean, I got my fair share of salty water. And while the salt part's like, okay, you really don't like it. But I just found it fascinating that this one thing of salt can make everything taste better. And so one time I heard a chef that I really actually very much respect and I've learned so much from. His name is Jean-Pierre. He's a great chef. He said it like this: salt enhances flavor. Well, now wait a minute. That thing that you tried that was missing salt didn't taste right. And then you add the salt and all of a sudden it comes alive. So if salt enhances flavor, then that means that flavor was already there. It just hadn't been enhanced yet. So no matter what you put salt on, there's already flavor there in that food, in that recipe. I've had times where I'm a huge fan and sucker for soup. I love soup. I could eat soup every day. It's so fun and fascinating to me to just throw all kinds of stuff in a pot and it come out amazing. And I've tried so many different new types of soups over the last couple years of trying new recipes. And several times, for whatever reason, because maybe some of them were kind of intricate, I would forget to put salt, right? And before I was getting to the end, I would take a taste and I'm like, wait a minute, it's missing something. And I would add all that salt and boom, it came alive. And I tasted exactly what it was supposed to taste like. And all of a sudden, it's alive. But all that flavor was already there. So salt enhances what is already present to make a flavor come alive, so to speak. And that concept is true of us and our giving. And I'm going to explain how that works. But think about that as I talk today. How salt enhances a flavor that's already there. When it comes to our life and our giving, it can be like that. So you might be wondering, what does salt have to do with giving? And I'm glad you asked. Because one of the greatest things that we can ever bless someone else with, a gift that we can bless someone else with, is our life. Our life can be one of the biggest and most valuable blessings that we can give to somebody else. Now, I'm not talking about laying your life down for somebody. That is the ultimate sacrifice and gift. By saving someone else, you give your life. Of course, yes, we established that. That's not what I'm talking about today. What I mean is that Jesus describes us as the salt of the world. We are the salt. And when we surrender to Christ and we give him our all, when we live in that way where everything about us, every part of who we are represents him, our lives become a blessing to others, even if they don't realize it. All of a sudden, as we walk with God, we become that salt. It's almost like Jesus living in us is enhancing the flavor of life around us. It's an interesting concept because a lot of times people think they have to give something physical. They have to give something money or valuable. And you can. There's nothing wrong with that. And I highly encourage, if you have the opportunity to give a material good to somebody who is in need, do it. But really, it's our lives that become that gift that we can give, that salt to the world. And the flavors of life are already present because God designed it. So everything is there in life, waiting to be enhanced and activated by those of us who walk with God and emulate Christ in our life, love on God, and give our all to Jesus. All of a sudden, we become that enhancement of what God designed. Just like a soup or a stew or a dish that doesn't have salt. All the flavors are there, ready to go. And it's not until you add that salt that the dish comes alive. That's what a believer and the body of Christ is to the world, even if they don't realize it, even if they don't believe, even if they don't know it. We become what God designed to enhance the flavors that He put in this life. We become the gift, the blessing in others' lives. That's why I'm saying the best and most valuable thing that we can give to people is our life, is to give them something that they don't usually see. In 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 11 and 12, it says, aspire to lead a calm and peaceful life as you mind your own business and earn your living, just as we've taught you. By doing this, you will live an honorable life, influencing others and commanding respect of even unbelievers. Then you'll be in need of nothing and not dependent upon others. Peaceful life, honorable life, commanding respect, all needs met. That sounds pretty good, right? Living a peaceful life, an honorable life, commanding the respect of others, and having all your needs met. That about sums it up. Okay, thanks. You guys are dismissed. Just kidding. It's almost like a leader in an organization, right? You can't buy those things. You can't fake those things. You have to earn respect as a leader in an organization. You can't make people lead you, but you can inspire people to lead you by how you act, by the choices that you make, by the words that you speak, by how you treat people. Through all those daily choices of certain types of values that we value, a leader will command respect of others. If a leader truly treats people the way they would want to be treated, their troops will follow them. Their troops will respect them because they know that that leader has their back, and that inspires them to want to lead. And so as we live out the values of Christ in our life, as we absorb the word of God, as we listen to the Lord speak into our hearts, day in and day out, we dedicate our life to God, and all of a sudden our values start changing. Our values, the things that are important to us, are not important to us anymore, because what's important to God now becomes important to us. And we know that we'll be taken care of in the process. So we start taking on these values from God, and we embrace them and we push them out. Just like a good leader embracing all the right values, everything is going to line up. So we do that. We live for God. We give Him our heart. We surrender. And automatically, through that process, over a lifetime, you attain a peaceful life. You attain an honorable life. Without having to ask for it, you will command the respect of others around you, including people who don't believe in God. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that before. I've had a few people in my life where, because of the way I lived, because of dedicating my heart to God, even though I knew for a fact that they were not going to change their mind on believing in God, there was a certain respect there that I gained from them. They respected me because I chose this path of faith. They were admiring, wow, I don't agree with that, but that's pretty cool that you can do that and that you're having such an effect on people around you, right? It commanded their respect even though they didn't agree or believe in it. And of course, all of our needs being met. These things will just happen. As we obtain the values of God, the things that are important to Him, the way He wants us to live, all these different things, that's what comes to us. And so this is how we get to become the salt. This is how we get to become the gift that keeps on giving. We are that gift to the world. Jesus came and made the ultimate sacrifice so that we could live with Him within us. And that's how we become the salt to God. And we have to first obtain these values of God. We have to embrace these values from God. And it's through this process that we even find the life that He sees for us. Because a lot of us don't know which way God's going to take us. but it's through that daily sacrifice. It's through that absorption of his values and the things that are important to him. And so this morning, I just want to go through a few scriptures, and I'm going to kind of briefly go over them. And I'm just going to talk about how these, when you put it all together, everything that I'm talking about, that you will become that salt to the world, that gift that keeps on giving. So we already talked about the First Thessalonians 4 and how through that, right, you will automatically gain that peaceful life, that honorable life, commanding the respect of others, having all your needs met. You're following God, all that stuff is going to come to you. The next thing that God asks us to do to be that salt to the world is to support the weak. It's in Acts 20. He asks us specifically to support the weak, whether weak in spirit, weak in soul, weak in body. Clearly, this is for people. He wants us to be there as a support system in somebody's life. Specifically, he is asking you to be there to hold somebody up when they are down low. When they are weak, we should be there to help them, to support them. And I think it's essential for all believers to model this lifestyle. Oftentimes, like I was talking about with the giving thing, sometimes we look too big, right? Support the weak. You think of somebody who's really, really in a hard time in their life, or maybe they're going through some really difficult times. Maybe they lost a loved one. Maybe they just got fired. Maybe their whole life is turned upside down, whatever. Those are all, yes, they may be going through times of weakness, but there's also little things that happen in people's lives where they need that support system. They need that person in their life who can help them feel lifted up. And we are that person to the world. When someone is weak, God calls us to be their strength, to stand in the gap. And we all want to make a big impact. But every single person in this room and who's listening to me knows at least one person in their life who in some way is weak at something. So it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be grandiose. Think of the people that you interact with every single day. Think of the ones who have those weaknesses that you know they absolutely need your support in. These are the ones that I think God is really referring to. Yes, the bigger examples, we can support people in their time of need, in their time of weakness. But I think God is really looking for the day-to-day stuff, the people in our lives who really, truly need us as a support system. So God is asking us to find that person in our life and just support them, love on them, give them what they need. It doesn't mean you have to let them walk all over you, but there is sacrifice in a lot of what we do with God. And a lot of that comes to maturity, just knowing that that's what we're called to be to the world, to support people in their weakness. We're supposed to show them the strength to inspire them in their weakness. That's the whole point of supporting somebody in their weakness, is that it will inspire them. Eventually it will happen. I know people who are weak in certain areas and it just feels like they're never going to get it. They're just never going to get it. Well, just keep on trucking. Keep on supporting them. At some point, only God can transform people through his word. At some point, they will be transformed. They will start to get it, or they won't. But either way, you're doing what God is calling you to do. And that, again, creates the enhancement of life. By you supporting the weak, it goes back to what I was talking about. It brings forth something, because most people are not necessarily naturally inclined to do that. Good people want to help others. But when you have someone in your life who is constantly needing support, at some point we all reach our end. Like, okay, do I really got to keep supporting this person? Yes. Yes. You will have peace in your heart, and you will become the salt of their life. When we act like this, when we support those that are weak continually, the day-to-day grind where things kind of get old after a while, but you stay steadfast in that support, others around you will start to notice, and they'll start to see, you're different. No matter what, you just keep showing up and helping those people who are in need. You support people who are weak. That's what they start to notice. That is the salt starting to take effect. When you take the bite of the food without salt, it's not as impactful as when it finally has salt. When it finally has salt, it all just comes together in your mind. Your palate connects with your brain, and your brain lights on fire. Like, whoa, that's what it's supposed to taste like. That's what happens with people. As we support the weak, as we live these values out that God calls us important, all of a sudden things happen where people start noticing, and that becomes the salt in their life. That becomes the testimony. That becomes the things that they can be inspired on. Not just the person who's weak, but everybody around who sees that you're doing this. Jesus calls us to walk in his footsteps, and he was always very compassionate and loving towards those who had weakness in their life. When you read the stories in the Bible about Jesus' life, he had a lot of patience and compassion and love for the people who were weak. For those that needed support, he was there for them. He approached them with a confidence and a strength that they could draw from. They wanted to be around Jesus so that they could feel that support and that strength. Jesus reacted different to people who weren't weak, right? The people who were prideful and the people who thought that they were strong through their arrogance, Jesus showed a little spicier side to them, right? He wasn't the salt to them. He was the hot sauce to them. He was much different towards those people. But to the weak, he was extremely compassionate, extremely loving to them. And so we want to emulate that in our life and support the weak, to be there, to be that support system. The next value that I'm going to talk about, I think it's going to help you in this first one that I mentioned about helping people that are weak. To be able to do that, you have to have this next one. And that is to be mature in your faith and patiently embrace others in immaturity. Because let's face it, a lot of times where people are weak, they're also immature. There's certain things in life that they haven't quite figured out yet. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to go together. Some people are just weak for whatever reason. But we have to be mature in our faith and patiently embrace others in their immaturity. This is another value that creates us to become that salt. It's in Romans 15. And I would say that immaturity plagues our society. It absolutely plagues our society. And I don't know if this has always been true because I haven't really lived in more than one generation, but I would venture to guess, because in our country how wealthy we are, all of us are wealthy. Every single one of you listening to me is actually rich because of where you live and because of the setup. No matter how much money you make, it has nothing to do with it. Compared to a lot of other countries, you are so rich, it's not even funny. Now, of course, we lose sight of that. Our perspective kind of shifts after our daily grind. But every single one of us is rich. And so we live in this place where children are raised in that. A lot of them don't have appreciation for certain things. A lot of them are entitled. And that's starting to plague our culture. And I think that really plays into the immaturity. Again, I don't know if this has been true for all of humanity. I'm sure there's a level of immaturity that is obviously true for all of humanity because as we grow up, we mature. But immaturity, I think, is plaguing our society more than usual. But the interesting thing about that is it's not just young people. Most of us were probably thinking young people as I was describing that. But it's both young and old. People have gotten a little confused nowadays, thinking that the world revolves around them. You know, like I heard advice one time that you should be very wise about when you give your opinion, because not everybody wants to hear your opinion. Not everybody wants to hear what you have to say. But you look at how people troll online. video comments, social media comments, and it's like everybody has an opinion, especially when you get to politics. And frankly, I'm not interested in most people's opinions. They just don't know it yet. And they probably don't care. And that's fine. But I keep that in mind before I share my opinion. The point I'm trying to make is that our culture has shifted. We're both young and old. We have this immaturity about us, and we don't even realize it. And it goes well beyond just having an opinion and sharing it when maybe you shouldn't. There's a lot that goes into this. Immature people lack emotional control. To lack emotional control shows that you have not matured in that area yet. Immature people don't know how to activate their intelligence. And immature people often need constant guidance in certain types of situations. Their approach becomes very obvious in life through the situations they encounter, the relationships they encounter, and all the problems that come with all of that. It's usually pretty clear when somebody's immature to everyone else. It's kind of like an alcoholic. They're usually the last person to figure out that there's a problem. It's the same thing with immature people. They are usually the last ones to figure out, oh, I have an issue. I'm immature. I'm lacking maturity. And usually when somebody's immature, there's a lot of drama in their life. It just seems to follow them. And they think that it's everyone else, but really it comes back to their maturity, their emotional intelligence, their ability to activate regular intelligence in all these different situations in life. I grabbed a couple of funny quotes just to break up the monotony of my sermon. I know it kind of gets old listening to somebody, so I'm going to liven you guys up real quick. There's some immaturity jokes. I guess some people grow emotionally like a tree. It takes forever for them to grow up. It's not that I'm immature, it's just that you started it. That's a good one. You can only be young once in life, but immaturity can last a lifetime. So true. It's so true. So, I asked the question, why would God ask us not only to walk in maturity in ourselves and in our faith, but also to show patience for those who are immature? Well, frankly, I think the answer to that is because it covers a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are immature. A lot of people. And if we just excluded them, that would be a problem for God because He loves everybody. And so He wants us not only to practice maturity in our own life, He wants us to practice patience for those who are immature. Again, these are values from the Word of God who help our life become that gift that keeps on giving, to become that salt that enhances the flavor of life. It is through maturity and having patience for those who are immature. And I think that's what separates us. When we get to that place where we can embrace those things, where we can live that out as a value, where we always constantly try to grow ourselves, we try to become more wise, to become more mature, and to have patience for those who maybe aren't at our pace in that area of their life. It is that separates us. It makes us different. People notice that. It's almost like a breath of fresh air because you don't see it that often. There are very wise and mature people, but they're rare. They're not as common as those who practice immaturity in their life and don't even realize it. They're very, very rare, so they stand out. They very much stand out. I think back to all the situations in my life, whether at a job or just in life, and I can really pick out just a few people who are actually extremely wise and very mature in their life or in their faith. There were so many others who just walked in immaturity and they didn't even realize it. And I was one of them. I was definitely one of them. I remember those people when I was acting in immaturity, those people who came to my life, either through happenstance or on purpose, and they begin to speak into my life through that maturity. and it was absolutely transformational. I didn't realize certain things that were going on in my life until I was around those people who practice that maturity, who live in that, and have patience for my immaturity. All of a sudden, I start noticing that there's something different. There's something different in that person and how they're approaching life and how they're approaching this problem or how they're approaching this relationship with another person. There's something different. It's almost like you're drawn to it. When you're in immaturity and you're around somebody who's mature, it should make you stop and think. Not everybody does this, but hopefully it has that impact. So there's something to be said about walking in maturity because of the impact that it can have. When you look at what Jesus dealt with, this was so for him too. All the things that he had to encounter, he had to be mature in his ministry. He had to be patient with those who were immature. Or he wouldn't have said, "How long must I be with you?" That was him speaking out his patience in their immaturity. He was pointing out that those around him, that they lacked in their faith and their immaturity was frustrating him in that moment. He's trying to teach things to his disciples to get them to understand these principles that he is literally living out, and they still don't get it. Time and time and time again. And he's like, "How long must I be with you?" He's getting frustrated in their immaturity, but he still showed that patience. He still showed that patience and helped to be that maturely faithful person in their life. He's basically asking, how many times do we have to face the same issue before you get it? How many times? How many times are you going to have to deal with this same problem until you get it? I think we can all realize times in our life where that was us, or we've seen people in our lives where clearly they weren't getting it. God is asking us to be mature in our faith and to have patience for people like that, for people who are in a moment where their immaturity has taken over, because we've all been there. We've all lived those times, right? Jesus' love and his maturity and his patience prevailed in his ministry. The final value that I want to talk about that will help us all become that salt to the world is out of 1 Corinthians 9, where it calls us to endure all things. To become that salt that enhances the flavor of life, you have to learn how to endure all things. Each one of you. If you don't think that applies to you, then you're wrong. God calls you as a believer to endure all things, not just good things, all things. Not just convenient things, all things. Not just the blessings, all things. And to endure means to suffer something that is painful or difficult patiently. You have to suffer something that is painful and or difficult with patience. That does not sound fun. Not at all. And yet, God calls us to that. He calls us to endure all things. I looked up the word endure this morning, and it has a root word in Latin that actually means to harden. So God wants you to be hardened in all things. That doesn't sound right. He wants me to be hardened in all things. So to endure is to be hardened? That's interesting. Well, God is not wanting us to have hardened hearts. Our hearts have to remain tender towards him. But I find it fascinating that he calls us to be able to endure all things, which means, literally, to be hardened. Don't worry, I'll explain. What I think the Lord is asking of us in this is to allow the things that we face in life, no matter what they are, to become the things that strengthen us over time. As you endure, you will no doubt gain and grow in strength. It hardens you in that way where you start to grow and you start to become stronger because of the things, because you are suffering with patience. You know, in the Army, they trained us a lot. I was in the infantry for a little while. And so it was all about training for battle. Day in and day out, you learned different battle principles. And an unofficial battle principle was to be a hard target. They trained you to be a hard target. And what we understood that to mean was that everything that we were doing, the physical shape that we were in, and how we looked in our uniform was supposed to be so intimidating to the enemy that it would make them think twice before they attack us. They would use references like, think of the most horrible soldier you've seen in your time in the Army. Out of shape, uniforms all messed up. They don't know what they're doing. They screw up battle drills. They can't follow directions, all these things. Now think of the most squared away soldier who beats everybody in the physical training, who knows all the battle drills, who hits the target every time when they're at the range shooting. Which one do you think the enemy's going to go after first? Which one do you think is going to intimidate the enemy? It's the hard target. That person who has so become the identity of what a soldier should look like, to put the fear in the enemy. There's a famous U.S. general, I'm going to butcher his quote, but he basically said, I think it was Patton, don't die for your country, make the poor bastard from the other side die for his country. He's talking about being a hard target. He's talking about being so good at what you do as a soldier, you make the other guys die for their country because you conquer. And I think that's what God is trying to say, right? I think that's the picture that he's talking about when he wants us to become hardened through enduring all things. By enduring all things, we make it difficult to be attacked by the enemy because we are hardened in the right way. We are hardened in a way where the devil thinks twice about attacking us. He knows that he can't infiltrate our heart. Though he may try, he knows he's not going to get in because we have become hardened through this enduring all things, this suffering with patience. By being hardened, we become robust in our spirit. We have a high level of awareness and preparedness. No matter where we go, no matter what we face in life, we're ready. And we're ready to walk with God. To be hardened in that way sounds a lot better than to be patient during pain or difficulty. It sounds a lot better to me than to just sit there and be patient and endure pain. Yeah, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to suffer a little while. But through that suffering, through that enduring, through that difficulty or that pain, it's going to strengthen you in the spirit. And all of a sudden, as you embrace this value of God, where you don't let the things of life knock you off your horse, you get stronger and stronger and stronger. I mean, really think about your life. For those of you who have really walked with God for a long time and you've really tried to do it, look back to where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Look how much more prepared you are now in the spirit than you were then. You should be much stronger now than you were then. And that's all through the hardening process, where you become a harder target, where you become that salt, where the world looks at you and thinks, how can you still be full of joy? How can you still be tender in your heart towards God after everything you've been through? It's because you've been hardened in the right way. And we have to be able to have a tender heart towards God. God calls us to be hardened in all that we are facing so that no matter what comes at us in life, we're ready for it. And through that process, we can still be the salt to the world. But the only way to continue to be the salt to the world is if you keep your heart tender towards God as you suffer patiently or become hardened through that process. Why? Because if not, bitterness and unforgiveness will always try to take root. Always. When you go through tough times, when you're enduring all things, There are so many moments in those times where bitterness and unforgiveness try to come in. Anything painful or difficult that we have to go through, there's literally a place that's ready to be filled with bitterness and unforgiveness. It's called opportunity, right? There's an opportunity in our life to latch on to that bitterness and unforgiveness. Why did I have to go through this? Why did this have to be done to me? Whatever the question you might ask. But God still calls you to endure all things. He just asks that you keep that tender heart towards Him. Because the very same thing that can harden us in the right way to become a hard target, if not done in tenderness, if not lived out in tenderness, it will certainly harden us in the wrong way. When we approach life with a tender heart towards God, we will be hardened in the right way. When we don't have a tender heart towards God, these same situations that He's asking us to endure will harden us in the wrong way. Our hearts will become hardened towards Him. And that's what He wants us to be aware of. People see that scripture and they approach it with that loving, wonderful Christian attitude of naivety. Oh, yes, Lord, I'm just going to endure all things because that's the Christian thing to do. And then they hit the most difficult thing in their life that they've ever seen and could have never thought of. And next thing you know, they're bitter towards God. And they wonder why. Well, first of all, they were naive and probably immature as well. But second of all, they weren't tender in their heart towards God. When you endure all things, you have to know in your heart of hearts that God's got you, that He's going to hold you together, that He's going to hold you through it all. We were just singing in worship how good God is. That's what you have to be thinking about as you're going through that patient suffering of difficulty and pain, knowing that God is good. Not just thinking it, not just saying it over and over until you believe it, but knowing in your heart of hearts that God is good and He loves you. That's how you keep a tender heart. And that's how these things that you go through that can harden you will harden you the right way, where you become stronger. You become a force to be reckoned with in the Spirit. That's how we grow, is by enduring all things in the right way. And really, what we face in these situations as we endure all things is true for so many things in our life. It's the fork in the road. Are you going to go left or are you going to go right? As you're facing that difficult situation, are you going to choose life or are you going to choose death? God is calling you to choose life. And by learning to live from a place of tenderness towards Him in order to endure all things, you will choose life. In other words, you can't endure all things and become hardened in the right way unless you have a tender heart towards God. But it's through that process that we can become that gift, that salt to the world, where they will notice. Have you ever met somebody that has seemingly been to hell and back in their life, and yet they're still walking around? Here it comes. My little reference I always use. They're walking around, my Redeemer lives, right? And it's like, how can you still be singing that song after everything you've been through in your life? I've been here like a witness eating popcorn to a movie. Like, what is happening with this person? How can they have to keep going through so many difficulties and so many painful situations, and yet they're still walking through life singing that doggone song? It's because they've approached God with tenderness and they've learned to endure all things. And the strength within them is stronger than anything we can understand because it comes from on high. So we can't understand it in the natural, but we can live it through Christ. And it can become something that others notice. And as they notice it, it changes their perspective. Whether they know it or not, whether they believe in God or not, it doesn't matter. They will notice that there's something about you that is strong, even if I can't put the words to it. And that is, you have become hardened in the right way, where no matter what comes your way, with a tender heart towards God, you live out that you believe He is good. And people are drawn to that. All of a sudden, something in their life tastes a little better, and they don't know why. They get this inspiration. Something happens in their psyche where they're like, I want to be that. I want to be able to endure like that. That's why God calls us to that value of enduring all things. Because it's not just critical for our own life and our own growth and our own spiritual standing, but everyone else around us can benefit from that. That's how we can enhance the flavor of life. All these things that I talked about. Our life becomes the gift that keeps on giving. As we embrace all these things that I talked about, as we start to walk for God with reckless abandon, and we slowly but surely grow in Him day after day, and we become more mature, and we do all these different things, we become that salt, that flavor enhancer of life. And people won't even know why, but they'll want to be around you. They'll want to be around you because you've become that salt of life. It's not always everybody that recognizes this stuff. But the important thing to remember is that it's the people who really need it. The people who need it at that moment in their life, they're going to see that. They're going to feel that. They're going to taste that salt because they're like, this needs something. My life needs something. I'm missing something. I'm going through this same thing every day and something's missing. And they encounter you and all of a sudden they're like, what do you have that I don't? Because it sure feels like that's what's missing in my life. And they'll crave what you have. That's the whole idea of us embracing these values. Like I was talking about that leader in the beginning. When you work for somebody who's a really good leader and they really know what they're doing with leadership, you can't help but want to follow them. Something comes out within you where you're just like, I got to follow this person. I don't know why, but they just inspire me. I love being around them. Everything they say, I can learn something. Like, I just got to be around this person. It's the same thing. The people who need what we have, which is Jesus Christ, they will crave that salt. They will have a salt deficiency in their life, and they will crave anything that adds that flavor because they know that it has that thing that they need. Even if they can't put a name to it, even if they don't know why, they will crave it. So this morning, I just ask that you let God inspire your hearts to carry this out in your journey with Him, where you embrace these values to become the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, continue to give in any way that you can, but understand your life is the gift that God chooses to use. And as you embrace His ways, you become the gift that keeps on giving, every single one of you. You will have people in your life that crave what you have in the spirit, not material things, but they crave whatever it is that you ride on every day that keeps you going. They're going to want that. And as you embrace these things, His blessings will follow, both for you and for others, because He is that good. You just have to learn how to give your life to the world. Amen.